All right, so today we're here with Billie and Winnie, and this is their roadmap to success. And the Guardians contacted us to help them with the dogs being kind of reactive to the door. So I want to first just kind of direct you to the video above this one to help with keeping the dogs away from the door, which will eventually lead to them stop barking as well. So this is going to be helpful because the dogs are learning self-control and emotional regulation because they have to be able to keep themselves from rushing over to the door, and with that comes that kind of self-regulation, which then eventually leads to them not barking anymore. The more times that you can do this, the better. So try to elicit help from spouses, the kids, other family members or friends, and kind of key them into like what you're doing. That way they know what to expect. So if you don't open the door immediately, they know what's going on, and they can have the kind of patience to know like that you're working with the dogs to try to help them be better and be respecting personal space and boundaries. The other things I want to remind you about are petting with a purpose. Make sure that every time you pet the dog, you're asking them to sit first. Now, a caveat to that is if the dog's already sitting or if the dog's laying down, you don't have to ask them to go from a down position into a sitting position. You can just go ahead and pet them. Over time, what the expectation would be is that the dogs will come over on their own and automatically sit in front of you to ask for attention. However, if you get to the point where the dog comes over and sits, and then they start kind of pawing at your leg or bunking your knee with their nose or something to demand attention, you want to ignore that type of behavior. But otherwise, you want to have them start to sit to ask for attention, and then once you're giving them attention, they can stand up. You can invite them on the couch with permission, up on your lap, whatever you want to do. That's pretty natural. They don't have to stay sitting the whole time. It's just their way of saying please and building up manners. Remember that if your dogs are doing this with you at home, this will help make this happen with guests as well. But if you don't have them sitting before you pet them at home, then they definitely won't be doing this with guests. So this is part of your way to help them have better behavior when guests do come over. The next part with petting with a purpose is just to remind you that if the dogs are anxious, so if they're barking or kind of running around or being in any kind of anxiety or hyper state, you don't want to pet them at this time. This will only reward that behavior. Essentially, you'll be telling the dogs, hey, this is awesome. When you're barking or getting all worked up or upset about something, I want you to do this more. So like a common place for this would be like at the vet. Like some dogs get nervous. If your dog were to be nervous at the vet, you don't want to pet them to soothe them. Essentially, you'd be saying, hey, when you're at the vet's office, be scared. So just keeping that as an analogy for any other area that your dogs might be anxious or anything like that. A good way to go about that is redirecting their attention, bring a couple treats, and try to ask them to sit or do any other tricks that'll help them kind of work through that anxiety and refocus their attention on something else. You can use the escalating consequences to disagree with the dogs. So remember, you want to start with hissing, then standing up abruptly, marching towards them, and then a leash timeout if they aren't listening to you, disagree with them. Remember from the video above this one, you can use the same method of setting an invisible boundary in different parts of the home and like around the kitchen table and things like that. So you have different ways of teaching the dogs not to come in and invade certain spaces at certain times. That could be really helpful with the daycare kids, that if they're eating in part of the downstairs room for them, that the dogs shouldn't be over there trying to pull food off the plate and things like that. So you can use the escalating consequences to disagree with the dogs for trying to take food, and even set that boundary far away from the kids' table so the dogs are staying respectfully back and not bugging the kids. For some rules that I want you to include, asking the dogs to sit before going outside, and also to help with some leadership is to have Billie, the older dog, go first before Winnie to go outside and up the staircase. And that can also for going down the staircase as well. You also want to use our structured eating method. So again, letting Billie eat first and making sure that you're using that invisible boundary to set that to keep the dogs far enough away from each other, and letting Billie finish all of her food before you invite Winnie to eat. And then they have 3 minutes to eat maximum. And if they haven't finished, that's when you pick the food up and put it away. That'll help them to eat promptly and kind of finish each meal. The other one is keeping them off of the furniture for a minimum of 30 days. Afterwards, you can choose to either have them come back on the furniture if they're invited to, or you can just keep them off the furniture if that's something that you like at that point. And last, I just want to remind you that everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.